Okay, so this is John of the Red Dice Diaries podcast, and we're back for our fourth episode of the RPGaDay 2019. The word for today is share, and I'm joined by my lovely wife Hannah, and we're going to talk a little bit about disseminating information in games. So we struggled a little bit with this. We were chatting about it before we started recording, and you suggested the idea of talking about people sort of sharing out stuff between the group and stuff like that.
It's certainly something that affects like big games like LARPs a lot more than it affects a small tabletop where everybody hears what goes on anyway. But if one player gets hold of a particular piece of information or a particular item and doesn't share it with the party, it can often really hold up how everything goes, or it can just like lead to detrimental results, like I've got the secret letter that reveals that such and such NPC is actually the big villain and he's got these powers, but I'm not going to tell the rest of the party about it. Or I've got the magic MacGuffin that's really handy for elves, but dwarves can't use it, but I'm going to keep it in my bag because it's shiny and I don't like the elf.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird mindset to me. I mean, and I think part of it, and I've no real basis for this, but I think part of it probably comes from people sort of like thinking of their characters in isolation from the other characters. Because granted, I tend to run more games than I play, but I know when I play games, certainly tabletop, I tend to think of like the party as a unit rather than just like my character and the other characters. So just purely from like a making your party more effective sort of design, if I'm playing like a dwarf or something and I'm like, oh, what's this? I've discovered a magic longbow that like gives you like a +3 for an elf, and like I've got my mate who's playing like an elven archer. Straight away I'll be like, well, that item works better for the party in his hands. There you go. And yeah, okay, I might dress it up in character and have like my dwarf have a bit of banter with him and be like, oh, what are you going to give me for this? What are you going to give me for this bow knife? Is but out of character, I'll be like, do you know what? I can either keep hold of that and the party as a whole is less effective, or I can give it to the elf, knowing that, I mean, I'm probably increasing my chance of survival as well because I'm making the party better. And also, if you're open like that and you sort of share things like that, if the elf later on goes, oh, I've got this fucking hammer of like whatever dwarven kind that works better for dwarves, he's far more likely to then go like, oh yeah, you give me that bow earlier on. Oh, there you go, dwarf. And it's the whole one hand washes the other sort of thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think you're right. That works far more in sort of tabletop games than LARP, because again, because due to the size of LARPs, yeah, you have your groups in them and stuff like that, but everyone's sort of trying to like work on their own characters. Obviously, you sort of like you refer back to your group, but it doesn't work in the same way as it does in a tabletop game. It's difficult to describe. It's like a different type of game.
Yeah, it's still necessary to let people know what the story is for the adventure. I mean, that last one we went to, how much of the story did you actually come across in character?
For virtually none of it. And I think, but again, I mean,
without naming systems or anything.
On a more positive spin, I did come across a fair bit of like the plot, but that's because I know people in our sort of faction, in our group, who were like, oh, have you heard this is going on? Oh, have you heard this is going on? Oh, we think your characters would be good to get involved in this. And I think that's all part of sort of getting yourself involved and like putting yourself out there and sort of sharing what you have. People are more likely to reciprocate and share stuff with you. And I've always been in the mindset, that if I have like a bit of plot that I can get involved in, I will try and get as many people involved in that as possible, both because it makes the game more interesting, whether it's LARP, whether it's tabletop, whatever, and also because from a sort of self-serving point of view, if you get involved in a plot where you're like, oh, we need to come up with a way to beat this evil bad guy, the more people you get involved in it and the more different ideas you've got as how to solve it, the more likely you are to solve it. I mean, someone else, I might go, oh, we've got this like evil necromancer who's like threatening our village, and they might go, oh, well, have you thought about doing this? And it might be something I've never even considered, but that might be better than any of my plans. Or even if I go, oh no, I don't think that's going to work, that might cause me to think differently about what I'm going to approach it with myself. Okay, so have you got anything else you want to say about sharing information, or?
Do it. Always do it. Doesn't matter whether you share it while you're in character shouting at someone and calling them horrible names. If you give them the information, you give them the information, and then they're able to act on it. There's a million ways to share information. Share it.
Okay, and that's it for this short episode. We'll be back momentarily to talk about word number 5, which is space. So we'll catch you in a bit.